So in a haste or in a panic, they forgot to take the stuff that they stole. Hey y'all, welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so I really enjoyed doing my mystery week last month, and initially I intended on doing it every other month because I felt like I would be overwhelmed, but I had so much fun doing it last month, and I loved watching y'all responses and seeing y'all guests and just the engagement that I got. So I decided that I would do it again this month. And so today is day one of mystery week, and y'all let me know in the comments if y'all can already tell what the theme of this week is gonna be. Yeah, other than that, I don't think I have anything else to tell y'all or say in the beginning of this video, so we just gonna go ahead and jump right into it. And welcome to day one of mystery week, guys. Let's go. So today's case takes place in Plimpton, which is a small suburb in Plymouth, which is in southwest England, and this is where 81-year-old Audrey and 83-year-old Eric Hingston live. But before we get all the way into the story, I just want to give y'all a little backstory on how Eric and Audrey came to be married. So there's not a lot of information out there about Eric and Audrey's early lives. So for Eric, I'm gonna start when he's 18, and Audrey, she just pop up later. So when Eric was 18 years old, he became a pilot and joined the RAF. And for those of you who don't know what the RAF is, it is the Royal Air Force, right? Yes. And he was in the RAF during World War II and ended up flying missions for them. Now, the job that he had was pretty high profile and dangerous because, like I told y'all, he was a pilot, and so he piloted in World War II, and he would have to work missions flying into enemy territory, flying, I don't know if it was spies, equipment, or what, but he had to fly missions back and forth behind enemy lines, and he would be flying these missions for Winston Churchill's secret operations executive. And like I said, it was very high profile and very dangerous. And at some point after the war, Eric would end up leaving the RAF. And once he left the military, he decided to open up a butcher shop. He actually ended up opening, owning, and operating multiple butcher shops. And he was doing very well in this business. He was very successful with these shops. And by 1950, he would marry his first wife, whose name was Jean. And together they would have two kids, James and Sally. And Jean and Eric, they had a pretty good marriage. They had a really good life together. They raised their kids. They had a happy marriage. And the two would remain married until 1982 when Jean passed away. And this obviously caused Eric a lot of heartbreak, a lot of grief. And now he was lonely. He was an older man at this point, but he still wanted companionship. And that turned him to a woman who had been his friend for a while now. I'm unclear if she was friends with him and Jean or if she was just friends with Eric. But either way, he turned to this friend for companionship. And that friend was Audrey. And she had also recently become widowed when her husband had passed away of a heart attack. So you have these two elderly people now who are both lonely, who are both needing companionship. And so the two of them get together and they get married in 1983 when Eric was 62 and Audrey was 60. Now, Audrey and Eric as a couple were said to have been cute. They would often take walks together, go down to the local coffee shops and have drinks. They would also travel abroad together on multiple different occasions. And even though the two of them were older in age, they were very active people. They lived very active lives for them being up in age, right? And they just loved being around one another. Like I said, they wanted companionship again, and they found that in each other. Now, by this time, Eric had retired from the butcher shop and left it to his son, James. But Audrey and Eric still lived above the butcher shop. So there was the butcher shop that was below, and then right above the butcher shop was their place, was their apartment. So even though he was retired from the butcher shop, Eric would often go down. He would still talk to his customers. He would still see all the normal faces that he would see when he was the actual butcher, and he would still talk to them, communicate with them. And Audrey, she was no stranger to the butcher shop either. She went down there, spoke to the locals as well. And this is pretty much the life that Eric and Audrey led since the moment they got together, traveling, walking, talking, and enjoying each other's company, right? Until Eric's health took a major turn when he turned 80 years old. So when Eric turned 80, a lot of health issues started arising within him. He developed asthma. He had developed heart problems to the point where he needed to have surgery and get a pacemaker. He had to have a hip replaced. He needed a catheter. And so all of this stuff started happening in rapid succession, and Audrey essentially became his primary caregiver. So they had gone from this super active lifestyle and did a complete 180 to where Eric was barely able to move or get out of bed alone. The active lifestyle that they had been living was essentially gone. So over the next 2 years, the couple would go out as much as they could, but like I said, Eric was in very poor health, so it definitely wasn't anywhere near as much as they would have been going out prior to. One night on August 29, 2003, the couple's life would take another sharp turn left, okay? It was around 3:45 in the morning and Audrey called 999, and that's like they 911. She tells the dispatcher that someone had broken into her and Eric's home and stabbed Eric. Now, Plimpton is a really low crime area, so for them to get a call like this is so rare. Not only did somebody break into the home, they actually physically assaulted one of the residents. So obviously the police come right away. Once they get there, the main focus is Eric. The paramedics actually thought that they had found a heartbeat and tried to resuscitate him, but unfortunately, since he had the pacemaker, it was giving off a false pulse, and so the pulse that they thought they felt was actually just his pacemaker kicking in and trying to restart his heart. Eric was actually already deceased. So the police are looking around, and immediately this seems like a burglary gone wrong. They're looking around the room, the closet doors are open, the dresser drawers are open, things are strewn about, and everything just it's in disarray. It looks like the burglars came in, ransacked the place, stabbed Eric, and left, leaving behind a black trash bag by the window that was full of all the stuff that they had collected to steal. So in a haste or in a panic, they forgot to take the stuff that they stole. And everything that they seeing at the scene is matching everything that Audrey's telling them. So according to her, she said that she and Eric were sleeping in separate rooms due to his condition. He had to kind of sleep upright with the window open because of his breathing problems and stuff like that. So the two have been sleeping in separate rooms. She heard some commotion and some ransacking and some just noise that she shouldn't be hearing. And she got up and she came into the room, and as soon as the burglars saw her, they fled through the window, leaving the black bag as they exited. So everything is adding up. So because this is a burglary turned murder, the forensic guys get to forensicing. They're hoping that they can get some type of forensic evidence in the case. But they're having a real hard time finding anything. No fingerprints, no hair, no fiber, no spit, no blood, nothing. Like, they can't find nothing. It seems like these two burglars were very careful not to leave any evidence behind. So the next day rolls around. It's now August 30th, and the police want to talk to Audrey again because in a haste, like when something traumatic or tragic is happening to you, your mind is all fogged up and you might get not necessarily get details wrong, but you might forget details. And once your mind is clear and starts like to process everything that happened, you can give better, clearer details of the situation. And so the police go to talk to Audrey again the next day, and she does in fact give them more information, and she tells them that she actually got a clear, good look at these two suspects and that she can give a good description. She said that the first guy was a pretty tall guy. He was about 6'1". He had on a deerstalker hat and some white pants. And then the other guy, he was shorter than the first guy and he was kind of stocky. He was about 5'8". And she also said that she had seen at least one of them walking around the village at some point in time, like prior to the burglary. And so the police started looking for these suspects right away. And as they going through their databases looking for the suspects, a press conference is held on September 1st. And at this press conference, Audrey actually delivers a statement. She speaks at this press conference, which they didn't think she would, but she actually did end up speaking at this press conference. And she pretty much says that whoever did this, it was unnecessary. Her husband didn't pose a threat to anybody. With all of his ailments, he could have been easily overpowered without having to have been killed. And she pleads for the public to help find these burglars who have essentially ruined her life. And so after the press conference, the description of the suspects is released. And essentially, as soon as the descriptions are released to the public, they are not hard to find at all. Because once the media got a hold of the description of the suspects and put it out, the two men actually ended up coming into the police station themselves. And so they are arrested and questioned immediately. And during the questioning, it comes out that these two men reside in a bail hostel. Now, I had no idea what the heck a bail hostel was, but it is a place that provides temporary homes for men and women who, because of their personal or domestic circumstances, would otherwise have to be remanded in custody. So pretty much they get out of jail, but they don't got nowhere to go. And instead of keeping them in jail, they can go to a bail hostel, right? Okay, so these two men reside in a bail hostel that's not too far away from where the crime had taken place. But bail hostels have rules in order to stay there. And once they got in contact with the people at the bail hostel, they said that the two men could not have been out at that time of night and still be able to reside in that bail hostel. They had very, very strict rules, and paperwork and documentation would prove that those two men were actually inside following the rules, and they could not have committed this crime. And so now the police is scratching their head because they like, now, okay, so why would she say that these are the two men and give this very in-depth description of these two men when that's not who committed the crime? It couldn't have been. It is proven that they could not have done this. And so they kind of chalk it up to her old age, and they like, well, maybe she saw them out earlier that day and she just confusing stuff, right? So with those two excluded as suspects, the police really have nowhere else to go. Leads are drying up and there's no other suspects at this point. But they still decide to dig a little harder and dig a little deeper and think a little deeper into this. They like, okay, somebody did this and we have to figure out who. So what they ended up doing was getting the forensic guys to try to isolate any fibers, DNA, blood, or anything that they could isolate that did not belong to the first responders, Audrey or Eric. And they did this in order to find anything foreign. So if it belonged to Audrey, Eric, or the first responders, or any of the police officers who was in there, then it was pretty much excluded, and then they could focus on the stuff that was found that didn't belong to any of them, right? And after doing all of that, they still had no luck. They found nothing foreign in that apartment. And for the life of them, investigators could not figure out how these people had left without leaving no trace evidence behind. Because of the way they had to enter the residence, it kind of seemed impossible. Unless it was like Clark Kent or something and Superman, they asked us through the window, it wasn't a thing. Because, okay, so let me explain the way it was. So I told you that Audrey and Eric lived above a butcher shop. And instead of there being a door directly to their apartment, I don't know how you got to their apartment, but the way the intruders would have had to get in was through an open window that was like a second story window. So they would have had to climb on top of a trash bin, you know, one of the ones that you roll to the curb for the trash man to pick up. Yes. So they would have had to climb on top of a trash bin and climb into the window. So they would have had to use their hands, physically push themselves up and go into the window. And because of this, detectives felt like something had to have been left behind. So because of the lack of DNA and there only being Audrey and Eric's DNA in the residence, detectives had to think about something that they really was trying hard not to think about. And that was the fact that maybe Audrey committed this crime. They didn't want to, but they had to start thinking about it because it's just not adding up. Stuff is not making sense. Especially when they start looking back on her story, because she said that she was sleeping in another room, came in, and the burglars like spooked and left, right? But the thing about it is, Audrey was a small, petite, older, 80-something-year-old woman. What was stopping the burglars from just knocking her over and continuing to ransack the place? So naturally, police want to talk to Audrey again after all these revelations is happening, no evidence is being found, and, you know, stuff like that. They just want to talk to Audrey again. But before they could do that, Audrey would end up in the hospital because of an unaliving attempt on her life. And she left a note. And the note said, "Please catch these terrible people who ruined my life. I can't live without Eric." Now, her attempt was unsuccessful, but the police did have to wait until she was out of recovery to talk to her. But that didn't stop them from investigating her ass, though. No. They still was strong on this investigation. And the police even decided to conduct like a little experiment, if you will. So they decided to recreate the way in which the burglars would have had to enter the apartment, and they tried to do it without leaving any evidence behind. So they picked two officers who were, you know, some physically fit, you know, nice built people who would have the strength to like push themselves up and like maybe like hurl themselves through the window. I don't know. So that they could try to recreate this without leaving any fibers, any DNA, nothing behind, like nothing. And they couldn't do it. They could not get into that apartment the way that Audrey said that the burglars got into the apartment without leaving some type of evidence behind. And because of this, this confirmed to them that this was not no burglary gone wrong. This was not a burglary at all. And this was further confirmed when they went to search the house again. They wanted to just see if they could find anything that they might have missed. And baby, they did. They did. They found a knife. It was a knife with a 9-inch blade that was like tucked along the side of the drawer where like you couldn't see it unless you was looking for it. And this knife had blood on it. It had blood on the blade of the knife. And obviously they sent the knife off for testing, and the blood was confirmed to be Eric's, and there was fingerprints on the handle of the knife and they was Audrey's. And then, if this ain't some sick shit, it's just sick. This knife, it was determined that Audrey had James, y'all remember James, Eric's son, the one who now owns the butcher shop. She had him sharpen the knife a week before Eric's murder. So coupled with all of this already, police had also learned that Audrey called 999 at around 3:45, but it had been determined by the medical examiner that Eric's time of death was way prior to that. And they had come across a delivery driver who said he delivers stuff to the butcher shop, and he was making his delivery at around like 2 o'clock in the morning, and he heard some groaning, like as in somebody was in pain, from the window above, which would be the window to the room that Eric was sleeping in. And so coupled with the medical examiner's time of death, they think that this is when Eric was actually stabbed, or very close to this time. And they think that after Eric was stabbed, Audrey walked around the room and staged the whole scene and put, valuables inside the trash bag to make it look like they was about to burgle the place. Is it burgle the place? I think so. So it made it look like they was about to burgle the place, and then left it by the window, because that's where they escaped from, and they got so scared that they dropped it on the floor. And so she staged the scene and then called 999. And so with all of this evidence, on October 7, 2003, Audrey was released from the hospital and promptly arrested. Now, as they was interviewing her, she stuck to her guns. She said, "That wasn't me. I didn't do it. These people tried to burgle my place, and it is what it is. I don't know what to tell you. I can't help you. I don't know why y'all didn't find no evidence. They was just really good at what they did. I don't know." But then she changed her story, and she was like, "Okay, you know what? I was lying, but let me tell you why I was lying, because Eric actually did this to himself. And I pretty much just staged the scene because I didn't want the family to be embarrassed." So police ain't buying her load of crap. But while she was in custody, her son Peter, who was actually a retired police officer, he came and he wanted to see his mom. Now, normally this isn't allowed, but the police was like, "Okay, you know what? We're going to allow you and your wife to go sit in there with your mama and see, just, I don't know what they was expecting," but they allowed Peter to go talk to Audrey. And while Peter was in there, he actually ended up getting his mom to confess that she was the one who did this. And so once she confessed, Peter came out the room and he told the detectives what his mom said. And they asked him, would he be willing to write a statement against his mother about, her confession? And he was. He wrote a confession. He wrote a statement against Audrey saying that she confessed to Eric's murder. And with the statement from her son, Audrey's fate was pretty much sealed, and she was charged with the murder of her husband. So when Audrey went to court, they ended up reducing her charges to manslaughter based on diminished responsibility due to her age, history of depression, and her not being a threat to society or like the rest of society. And so on March 12, 2004, she pled guilty to these manslaughter charges, and she was sentenced to 2 years in prison. 2. Just 2. And she only served 1 before being released. She only served 1 year for murdering her husband because she was old, she was depressed, and she was not a threat to society. What? She ended up dying 12 years later in 2016, but like, my goodness, why? She should have served the rest of her life out in prison. She should have died in prison. She don't deserve no mercy because she old. And because of her crime, she's now known as the oldest woman to be jailed in Britain. At the time, I don't know about now, but she was the oldest woman to be jailed in Britain. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for this case. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you tomorrow for the second day of Mystery Week. Bye. So today we are in Plimpton. Are we in Plimpton? Yes, we are. And I pretty much just staged the scene so that, why? And at some point after the war was over, Robert, his name is not Robert, and that friend was Audrey Hepburn. Her name is not Hepburn. Oh my God. So it's around 3:45 in the morning and Audrey calls 911. Nope, she don't call 911. She don't. No, she don't. And during his time in the RAF, he would what would he do? He would work.